I'm Joanna Simpson here at Risk Minds International in London. Joining me now is Professor Jon Hill, Professor of Model Risk Management, Department of Financial Risk Engineering at NYU Tandon. Thank you very much for joining me.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to point out I am the only professor in the United States who has the title Professor of Model Risk Management. It's not a topic recognized in most universities, so I assigned myself that title.
Oh, right. You're forging the path.
Yeah.
And actually you're here because the title of one of your presentations is Will Artificial General Intelligence Eventually Make the Majority of Human Population Superfluous? So what's your opinion?
Yeah, I think that title has been watered down a little bit. The actual title of my talk is Can Humankind Hope to Survive AGI? Because it is a question of extinction. And if you've been following the industry news about AGI's artificial general intelligence, comparable to human intelligence, a lot of the experts, the leading thought leaders in artificial intelligence have been warning that they believe that AGI may lead to human extinction because eventually humans will come into competition with these advanced artificial intelligence systems. Artificial intelligence systems need electricity. They run off of watts, but humans need electricity too. And eventually there may be a contest, a competition for who's going to get the electricity that's needed. AGI systems, on the other hand, have no compassion, what we call compassion, and would not hesitate to eliminate humans if they thought they were getting in the way. There's no better example of this than from Stanley Kubrick's classic film 2001, when HAL, the onboard AGI computer, decides that the two astronauts are compromising the success of the mission, and he just decides to kill them off so that he can carry on the mission by himself.
Quite apocalyptic.
Yes, it is, and that film was made nearly 60 years ago, and yet it was very forward-looking, and we're facing that situation today. And my presentation will start by quoting some of these dire warnings you hear in the press that 300 AI experts have signed a document warning about the dangers of AGI.
So it's an adapt or die situation?
Yes.
And you're also holding a masterclass on the Boeing 737 airliner crashes. As a professor of financial model risk, why have you focused on these aviation tragedies in particular?
And I can give you a very straightforward answer to that. It's the most compelling example that I know of, and I cover 400-year history of model risks, disasters and events, but this is the most compelling example I know of that really shows the dangers of unmitigated model risk that's concentrated in the case of Boeing, and particularly a weak area of the aircraft, these what are called angle of attack sensors. When I first read about this problem in the New York Times, as soon as I looked at it, that was in 2019, I recognized right away this sounds like a problem in model risk management, and I decided I needed to find out as much as I could and delve into it. And so I've been giving talks on this for 4 years now, and each year I add more as I learn more and more about what went on that caused two crashes that took 346 lives. Completely innocent people who trusted their lives to Boeing, and discover how nefarious the behavior of Boeing and Boeing's management was in trying to deny responsibility. For example, the very first crash of the Boeing 737 MAX 8 occurred in Indonesia. The plane went into the ocean at 700 miles an hour. Everyone, of course, was killed. Boeing managed to blame the pilots for what clearly was a flight control problem. Even the Boeing engineers who looked at the radar traces knew right away, this is a problem in our flight control system. Nevertheless, management said, we'll blame the pilots. Try to fix the software, get it uploaded into the aircraft before the next crash occurs. They lost that gamble. They were willing to gamble passengers' lives against the race to fix the software problem, because if they could do that, they had succeeded in blaming pilots for the first crash, then they would escape any kind of blame. However, no one would ever know that it was a software problem that caused it. Unfortunately, the next crash occurred before they could actually complete that, and that's what exposed this whole. The title of my talk, by the way, is called Something Wicked This Way Comes. That's a direct quote from Shakespeare from Macbeth. It's a witch's incantation when they were talking about Macbeth, predicting his appearance in an attempt to take over the throne of Scotland. Macbeth killed about 5 or 6 people trying to climb to the top. Boeing killed 346 people. That's why I consider this to be a very appropriate topic. something wicked this way comes. And there are a few other quotes from Shakespeare in my presentation as well, because I had to turn to Shakespeare to find words to capture the enormity of what Boeing did. Blaming dead pilots who couldn't defend themselves so they could escape responsibility, and denial of responsibility through the whole process until finally they were grounded by the FAA after the second crash. So this is the most compelling example I know of why model risk is important. And my message is this only gets worse as we move into the future with more complicated systems, relying more and more on artificial intelligence and AGI systems to manage our sophisticated spacecraft and aircraft. There'll be more and more problems in space as well, because a lot of the spacecraft will be controlled by AGI systems. So my mission is to raise awareness of model risk and the importance of understanding and identifying and mitigating it.
And therefore, drawing parallels from the crashes, what lessons can the financial industry learn about risk management and safety protocols?
Well, it's a lesson unfortunately we have to keep learning. We took a very bitter lesson in the global meltdown of 2008, partly caused by faulty models. And as a result, the regulators, the FRB and OCC, really cracked down on the banks and made them improve their model risk management practices dramatically. So we are really the leaders now in finance and understanding and identifying model risk. And we have a handbook for model risk management. Technically it's called SR 11.7, issued by the FRB. But every other industry could take that document and apply it to their own situations because it's very generic and trying to understand and mitigate model risk through independent validation by independent teams that put second pairs of eyes on every model. When we got models from developers, we would always look at what they didn't test, because what they didn't test is where the problems were going to be found. Because owners of models do not like to break their models. It's just a natural human affection for the work that they've done. And we know that. So in finance, we have a second line of defense that's completely independent from the first line that develops models. The second line's job is to understand the failure modes of the models. So this can be applied to every industry, but it's also critically important in finance as well. Most people probably have not heard of the London Whale incident anymore. That happened in 2012. But that was a model failure, and it cost JP Morgan $7 billion ultimately in losses and fines. And it was strictly the result of a failed model that wasn't detected and went into production. So there are plenty of examples in finance of losses due to failure to understand and mitigate model risk. I give a whole presentation on the history of model risk when I talk about these other incidents. But I'm not giving that presentation this time.
But all fascinating examples. Professor Jonathan Hill, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.